Just this morning, underwater footage emerged that no marine archaeologist was prepared for. Deep within the Titanic's most exclusive dining space, the first-class dining room, a chamber that has remained sealed and unexplored for 113 years, a new discovery has shattered everything we thought we knew about underwater preservation. The footage has left oceanographers, historians, and even seasoned Titanic experts visibly shaken. It was not just the room's impossible preservation, it was the arrangement, the positioning, something that defies every law of physics and decay. The drone descended through a collapsed entrance that had been blocked by debris since 1912. As its powerful LED array cut through the eternal darkness, the first images transmitted back to the surface left the entire research team stunned. Suspended in the black water, fragments of what was once a magnificent crystal chandelier hung motionless, their cut surfaces still catching and reflecting the drone's lights like stars frozen in space. But that was just the beginning. The camera panned across the dining room floor, and what it revealed next sent chills through everyone watching. Wine glasses stood upright on tables, their delicate stems somehow unbroken after more than a century of crushing water pressure. Napkins remained folded in perfect triangular arrangements beside place settings of fine china that looked as if dinner service had been paused just moments before. A champagne bottle stood impossibly upright near the room's center, its cork still intact, its gold foil wrapping untarnished by the salt water. The thing nobody tells you about underwater exploration at this depth is how quickly your mind struggles to process what should not exist. At 12,500 feet below the surface, where the pressure equals 3 pickup trucks stacked on every inch of surface area, glass does not simply survive, it disintegrates. Organic materials like fabric decompose within decades. The preservation laws of deep ocean archaeology are absolute, or so everyone believed until this morning. What many overlooked in the initial reports was the impossible geometry of the room itself. As the drone maneuvered between hanging debris, its cameras captured something that made the team lean closer to their monitors in disbelief. 12 chairs had been pulled back from one ornate dining table in perfect symmetry, positioned as if a dozen passengers had stood up in unison and simply vanished. Each chair sat at precisely the same angle, each one the exact same distance from the table's edge. The drone's spotlight then focused on a detail that sent a collective gasp through the control room. Resting on the white tablecloth, somehow still pristine after 113 years underwater, lay a gold pocket watch. Its polished surface reflected the LED lights with mirror-like clarity, and through the camera's lens, the research team could make out its hands, frozen forever at 2:17 a.m. But the Titanic sank at 2:20 a.m. Those 3 missing minutes have never been explained. Silver cutlery lay arranged in perfect table settings, each fork and knife positioned with mathematical precision. Wine goblets contained what appeared to be preserved liquid, their crystal surfaces completely clear of the rust and sediment that coated every other surface in the wreck. Even more unsettling, the napkins were not just folded, they were arranged in identical patterns, each one displaying the same complex origami-like creation that would have taken skilled hands several minutes to complete. To put it mildly, the scene defied every principle of underwater decay that scientists had established over decades of deep-sea exploration. This was not random preservation. This was something else entirely. As the drone continued its survey, moving slowly to avoid disturbing the fragile scene, it captured one final detail that left the team struggling to find explanations. Near the far end of the dining room, partially buried under a thin layer of silt, but still clearly visible, lay what appeared to be an open leather menu, its pages somehow readable after more than a century submerged. The script was still legible, written in elegant handwriting, but it described dishes that were not on any known Titanic menu. Those were delicacies that historians had never documented as being served aboard the ship. But not all things are what they seem when it comes to the deep ocean's ability to preserve the impossible. The drone's sensors detected something else, something the human eye could not immediately process. The water in this room was different, it moved differently. The sediment patterns suggested that this space had been protected by forces that science could not yet explain. The footage is rewriting what we know about the deep sea, underwater preservation, and the final moments of the world's most famous shipwreck. The most shocking fact is that this discovery represents just the beginning. The room holds secrets that challenge our understanding of physics, history, and perhaps something far more disturbing about those final moments aboard the unsinkable ship. Sentinel of the Deep. The thing nobody tells you is how this particular drone mission almost ended in disaster 3 separate times before the first clear image ever reached the surface. You see, exploring the Titanic's first-class dining room isn't like navigating the ship's exterior corridors or cargo holds. This is a space where the normal rules of underwater physics seem to bend, where equipment behaves in ways that confuse even veteran pilots, and where one wrong move could destroy both priceless artifacts and millions of dollars of cutting-edge technology. The drone that captured this impossible footage represents the pinnacle of deep-sea exploration engineering. Built to withstand the crushing environment at 12,500 feet below the surface, its titanium alloy hull can resist water pressure exceeding 6,000 pounds per square inch. But pressure resistance was only the beginning of the challenges facing this mission. The dining room presented navigation hazards that no amount of engineering preparation could fully anticipate. As the drone squeezed through the collapsed entrance, its array of 12 precision thrusters had to compensate for something the team had never encountered before. The water inside the dining room moved differently. While most of the Titanic's interior spaces experienced predictable current patterns, sensors detected microcurrents swirling through the dining space in spirals and eddies that seemed to defy the ship's position on the ocean floor. These were not random water movements. They followed patterns, almost as if the room itself was somehow generating its own circulation system. What many overlooked in the initial mission reports was how the drone's navigation system struggled to maintain position. The AI co-pilot, a sophisticated collision avoidance system that uses sonar mapping to create real-time three-dimensional models of surrounding space, began registering what its programmers called spatial impossibilities. Objects appeared to be floating where the sonar indicated empty water. Distance measurements between the drone and solid surfaces kept fluctuating in ways that suggested the water itself was somehow denser in certain areas. The most challenging obstacle came from above. Hanging from what remained of the dining room's ornate ceiling, thousands of crystal chandelier fragments created a deadly maze of sharp, reflective edges. Each piece caught and redirected the drone's LED lights, creating a disorienting hall of mirrors effect that made depth perception nearly impossible for the human pilots watching the video feed. The crystals moved in the strange currents, swaying and rotating like underwater wind chimes, forcing the drone to constantly adjust its position to avoid collision. But the real nightmare was the lighting. At this depth, the ocean exists in absolute darkness. The drone's LED array, powerful enough to illuminate objects over 100 feet away, had to be recalibrated specifically for the dining room's unique environment. The preserved glassware and silverware created unexpected reflections that could blind the cameras. Worse, if the lights were aimed incorrectly at the hanging crystal fragments, they generated a disco ball effect, sending scattered light beams in all directions and making navigation impossible. The fiber optic tether connecting the drone to the surface ship represented another critical vulnerability. This lifeline, carrying both power and high-definition video signals across more than 2 miles of ocean, had to be threaded through an obstacle course of twisted metal, hanging debris, and those swaying crystal fragments. One snag on a sharp edge, one moment of careless maneuvering, and the mission would end with the drone trapped forever in the deep. The 12 thrusters positioned around the drone's body allowed for unprecedented maneuverability, letting it rotate on a single point, slide sideways through narrow gaps, and hover motionless while the cameras captured detailed footage. But in the dining room's confined space, surrounded by irreplaceable artifacts, every movement required surgical precision. The pilots, working from a control setup that resembled a spacecraft command center, used multiple joysticks and real-time sensor readouts to guide the drone between wine glasses that had survived over a century underwater. The most shocking fact about this exploration might be the artificial intelligence system that runs constantly in the background. While human pilots maintain primary control, the AI uses sonar sensors to map the drone's immediate surroundings and prevent collisions. But something was wrong with the AI's performance in the dining room. 3 times during the mission, the automated system triggered emergency protocols, attempting to force the drone into immediate ascent mode. The AI's threat assessment algorithms kept identifying anomalies in the environment that its programming could not categorize or explain. To put it mildly, the technology required to capture this footage pushed the boundaries of what is possible in deep-sea exploration. The drone's camera housing, protected by synthetic sapphire lenses several inches thick, recorded images with a clarity that made details like the pocket watch's hands and the napkin folds visible from the surface. But the machine that made this discovery possible also detected something its sensors could not explain. What many overlooked is that this was not just an exercise in advanced engineering. The drone's suite of environmental sensors recorded water temperature, chemical composition, current patterns, and electromagnetic readings throughout the dining room. The data it collected suggests that this space exists in a state of preservation that challenges fundamental principles of underwater environmental science. The temperature readings showed variations that should not exist at this depth. The chemical analysis detected preserved organic compounds that should have decomposed decades ago. But not all things are what they seem when it comes to the relationship between cutting-edge technology and the mysteries of the deep ocean. The drone that captured these impossible images also documented anomalies that left the research team struggling to explain their own sensor readings. This incredible machine gave us the pictures that are rewriting history, but what it measured inside that preserved dining room suggests that some discoveries challenge the very instruments we use to understand them. Blueprint of the impossible. For decades, our understanding of underwater decay was considered settled science. Organic materials decompose within years. Metal corrodes predictably. Glass shatters under pressure. The deep ocean follows rules, and those rules have been tested and verified through countless shipwreck explorations across the globe. The thing nobody tells you is that this new footage from the Titanic's first-class dining room is forcing scientists to reconsider everything they thought they knew about how the deep sea preserves and destroys. Using a technique called photogrammetry, computers have analyzed thousands of high-definition images from the drone, measuring distances and angles to build the first-ever comprehensive three-dimensional map of the dining room's interior. This digital reconstruction is revealing secrets that challenge the fundamental principles of underwater archaeology. The model shows something that should be impossible. The room exists in what scientists are calling a preservation anomaly, a space where the normal laws of deep ocean decay appear to have been suspended. What many overlooked in initial reports was the mathematical precision of the arrangements. Computer analysis of the chair positions reveals that all 12 seats are positioned at identical angles, each one pulled back exactly 18 inches from the table's edge. The wine glasses are not simply upright by chance, they are arranged in a perfect hexagonal pattern, with each glass positioned at precisely calculated intervals. The napkin folds, when analyzed through pattern recognition software, show identical crease patterns down to the millimeter level. This is not random preservation, this is deliberate arrangement. The digital model also reveals environmental data that defies explanation. Sediment flow analysis shows that while the rest of the Titanic receives constant deposits of marine snow and organic debris, the dining room exists in a current dead zone. Water circulation patterns indicate that the room has been essentially sealed off from the normal flow of deep ocean water for over a century. Oxygen levels in the space are 50 times lower than surrounding areas, creating what researchers describe as a biological vacuum where decomposition bacteria cannot survive. Temperature readings from the drone's sensors detected something even more disturbing. While the surrounding ocean maintains a constant 2 degrees Celsius at this depth, the dining room shows temperature variations that should not exist. Specific areas around the arranged table settings register temperatures nearly 4 degrees warmer than the ambient water. The pattern of these warm zones corresponds exactly to where place settings are positioned, as if each arranged seat somehow generates its own microenvironment. The most shocking fact to emerge from the scientific analysis is the age of the arrangements themselves. Carbon dating of water samples and sediment layers suggests that the current positioning of objects in the room occurred not during the sinking, but sometime within the past 20 years. Comparative analysis with historical footage from earlier Titanic expeditions shows that previous explorations of the dining room captured images of scattered debris and collapsed furniture. The current arrangement, with its perfect symmetry and impossible preservation, appeared sometime after the year 2000. Metal corrosion analysis reveals patterns that challenge basic chemistry. The silverware shows zero oxidation, appearing as pristine as the day it was manufactured. Spectral analysis of the metal composition indicates that the silver has somehow been protected by a thin film of unknown organic compounds. These protective layers do not match any known deep-sea preservation processes. They appear to have been applied artificially, coating each piece of cutlery with a substance that prevents corrosion in salt water. Computer modeling of the room's structural integrity reveals another impossibility. The dining room should have collapsed decades ago. The ceiling, weakened by a century of pressure and corrosion, lacks the structural support necessary to maintain its current configuration, yet the space remains intact, with hanging crystal fragments defying gravity and water pressure. Engineering analysis suggests that something is actively reinforcing the room's structure, preventing the collapse that should have occurred naturally. This is an impossible structural outcome by conventional engineering standards. What many overlooked is the organic preservation data. Fabric analysis of the napkins shows cellular structures that remain intact after 113 years underwater. The material has not just avoided decomposition, it shows signs of active preservation, with fiber structures that appear to have been chemically treated with compounds that do not exist in nature. The pocket watch contains mechanical components that should have seized or corroded within decades of submersion. Instead, its internal mechanisms show signs of recent lubrication with synthetic materials that were not invented until the 1970s. The wine glasses contain liquid that has been preserved in a state that challenges basic physics. Chemical analysis reveals that the liquid maintains a composition identical to 1912 vintage champagne, complete with carbonation levels that should have dissipated within hours of exposure to deep ocean pressure. The champagne's molecular structure shows no signs of degradation, as if time itself has been suspended within the crystal containers. But the digital mapping has uncovered the most disturbing discovery of all. Hidden beneath layers of marine sediment, the three-dimensional model reveals patterns of debris that could not have occurred naturally. Broken crystal fragments are arranged in precise geometric formations across the floor. Pieces of china are positioned in concentric circles around the central table. Silverware that should have scattered randomly during the sinking has been collected and arranged in specific patterns that match no known cultural or religious symbolism. To put it mildly, these findings contradict every principle of underwater archaeology. The scientific evidence points to a conclusion that most researchers are reluctant to discuss publicly. The current arrangement of the first-class dining room was not created by the ship's sinking, by natural ocean processes, or by random chance. Someone or something has been actively arranging and preserving this space for decades. But not all things are what they seem when it comes to interpreting scientific data from impossible environments. The computers can measure and analyze, but they cannot explain how wine glasses maintain perfect carbonation at crushing depths, why silver cutlery shows no corrosion after a century underwater, or who has been arranging debris into geometric patterns in a space that no human can reach. This new knowledge forces us to confront a deeply unsettling question about the nature of preservation itself, and what forces might be at work in the deep ocean spaces where science meets the inexplicable. A grave disturbed. Exploring the Titanic's first-class dining room is not just underwater archaeology, it is potentially witnessing the final moments of human lives. Perfectly preserved in a space where 113 years have somehow been compressed into a single, eternal instant. The discovery of the impossible arrangements, the preserved champagne, and the geometrically positioned debris has forced everyone involved in this mission to confront a question that goes far beyond scientific curiosity. When does exploration become violation of the sacred? The thing nobody tells you about making discoveries like this is the psychological weight that settles on everyone who sees the footage. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the mission's lead marine archaeologist, said she felt overwhelming dread when she first saw the clear images of the arranged table settings. She explained that looking at the perfectly positioned wine glasses and the symmetrically pulled chairs felt like intruding on a private moment that was never meant to be witnessed. It was not just preservation, it felt like walking into someone's home and finding dinner still waiting on the table. 3 members of the research team requested immediate transfer off the project after viewing the complete footage. The images of the pocket watch, frozen at 2:17 a.m., and the napkins folded with impossible precision created what the mission psychologist called acute historical trauma. These were not inexperienced observers. They were seasoned specialists who had explored countless underwater grave sites. Their reaction suggests that what lies in the Titanic's dining room transcends normal archaeological discovery. What many overlooked was the immediate response from families of Titanic victims. When news of the dining room discovery reached descendants of passengers who died in the sinking, the reaction was swift and divided. Margaret Rothschild, whose great-great-grandmother perished in the disaster, issued a statement calling for immediate cessation of all filming in the dining area. She said the arrangements, whatever created them, represent something sacred, and that her ancestors' final moments should not be broadcast as entertainment. But other family members took the opposite position. James Widener, a descendant of a first-class passenger, argued that the discovery represents crucial historical evidence that must be documented before it is lost forever. He said that if someone or something has been preserving this space, we have a responsibility to understand why. He added that ignoring this discovery does not honor the dead, it abandons them to whatever forces have been at work down there. The international maritime archaeology community has been split by the revelation. Dr. Robert Ballard, who discovered the Titanic wreck in 1985, released a statement expressing grave concerns about the ethical implications of documenting what appears to be an actively maintained memorial site. He questioned whether the research team has the right to investigate arrangements that may have been created by unknown parties for purposes they do not understand. Religious leaders from multiple denominations have weighed in on the controversy. Father Michael O'Brien of the Catholic Maritime Memorial Foundation called for an immediate blessing ceremony to be performed over the wreck site before any further exploration continues. He said that whether the arrangements were created by natural forces, human intervention, or something else entirely, this space has clearly become a place of reverence that demands our respect. To put it mildly, the public reaction has been unlike anything seen in maritime archaeology. Social media platforms have exploded with theories, debates, and calls for action. Some users demand immediate retrieval of the pocket watch and other artifacts for analysis. Others insist that the dining room should be declared off-limits to all future exploration. The most extreme voices suggest that whatever forces have been maintaining the room should be left undisturbed, regardless of scientific value. The most shocking fact about the team's psychological evaluations is what they revealed about prolonged exposure to the footage. Researchers who spent hours analyzing the dining room images reported experiencing what they described as temporal displacement, a feeling that the preserved scene was somehow still happening, that the arranged chairs and positioned wine glasses represented an ongoing event rather than a historical artifact. Several team members admitted to having dreams about sitting at the preserved table, waiting for dinner companions who never arrive. But not all things are what they seem when it comes to the psychological impact of this discovery. The research team was not just disturbed by what they found in the dining room. They were terrified by what the arrangements might represent. If the positioning of objects has been maintained artificially for decades, if the preservation has been actively managed by unknown forces, then the dining room is not just a historical site. It is an active location where something continues to happen, something that involves the deliberate arrangement of objects in patterns that serve purposes no one can explain. What many overlooked in the initial ethical debates is the question of time. The dining room's impossible preservation is failing. Computer models suggest that the protective environmental bubble maintaining the space will collapse from 5 to 10 years from now. Whatever forces have kept the arrangements intact for over a century are weakening. The wine glasses that have maintained their carbonation for 113 years are showing microscopic stress fractures. The napkins that have retained their precise folds are beginning to show signs of deterioration. This creates an impossible moral calculus. Should the team document everything before it is lost forever, potentially disturbing what may be a sacred space maintained by unknown parties? Or should they withdraw and allow the preserved moment to return to the deep ocean undisturbed, taking its secrets with it? The window for decision-making is closing, but the ethical implications grow more complex with each new piece of evidence. The preservation dilemma has reached the highest levels of international maritime law. UNESCO representatives are calling for emergency protection protocols that would classify the dining room as a site of exceptional historical and spiritual significance. But other organizations argue that the scientific value of the discovery outweighs concerns about disturbing what they consider an underwater curiosity of unknown origin. The research team faces questions that go beyond professional archaeology. If the arrangements in the dining room represent someone's attempt to create a memorial, does documenting them constitute desecration? If the preservation has been maintained by forces that science cannot explain, what responsibility do researchers have to respect those forces? And if the pocket watch, the wine glasses, and the positioned chairs represent an ongoing event rather than a historical artifact, what are the implications of interfering with whatever is taking place in that impossible space? The most disturbing aspect of the ethical debate may be what it reveals about the nature of the discovery itself. The team is not just exploring a shipwreck. They are investigating what appears to be an active site where unknown parties have been conducting unknown activities for decades. The perfectly preserved dining room is not a museum piece. It is a place where something continues to happen, something that involves the careful arrangement of objects in patterns that serve purposes no living person understands. This new chapter of Titanic exploration has forced everyone involved to confront questions that have no clear answers. Questions that challenge the fundamental assumptions about the relationship between scientific discovery and human respect for the sacred. The impossible choice. This new discovery in the Titanic's first-class dining room forces us to ask a question that goes beyond maritime archaeology. When we peer into a space where unknown forces have maintained a perfect tableau for over a century, when does scientific curiosity become violation of the sacred? The research team now faces an agonizing decision. The dining room's preservation is failing. Within a decade, the wine glasses will shatter, the pocket watch will corrode, and whatever memorial has been maintained in that impossible space will be lost forever. Do they return to document every detail, or do they respect the unknown parties who have clearly been tending this underwater memorial? What many overlooked is the most disturbing implication of all. The arrangements did not happen once during the sinking. The scientific evidence suggests they have been maintained and renewed over decades. Someone or something has been returning to that dining room generation after generation, maintaining the tableau with dedication that spans human lifetimes. The pocket watch, frozen at 2:17 a.m., might hold the key to understanding everything. Those final 3 minutes before the official sinking time have puzzled historians for over a century. Why has someone chosen to preserve that specific moment with such mathematical precision? The wine glasses containing perfectly preserved champagne represent another impossibility. Chemical analysis suggests the liquid has been replenished, not just preserved. But who has been bringing champagne to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean? The arranged chairs tell perhaps the most haunting story. 12 seats pulled back in perfect symmetry, positioned as if their occupants had just stepped away. The arrangement represents either a memorial to unknown victims or something far stranger, a dinner party that has been waiting over a century for its guests to return. To put it mildly, this discovery suggests that the deep ocean might be a place where the past is actively maintained, where unknown forces tend to underwater memorials with dedication that spans generations. The Titanic's dining room is not just a historical artifact, it is an active site where something continues to happen, where the past refuses to remain buried. But not all things are what they seem when it comes to forces operating where science meets the inexplicable. Should we continue to peer into this underwater memorial where the impossible has become routine? Or are some discoveries too sacred, too dangerous, too far beyond human comprehension to pursue? Let us know your thoughts below. Do not forget to subscribe for more journeys into the mysteries that challenge everything we thought we knew.